What's going on? Hope you're doing well. Ryan back again. I just wanted to do a tutorial on some basic orchestration techniques. We've looked at some slow string moving lines, some fast string moving lines, and I just wanted to show you a bit more. So let's take a look. Okay, I'm going to try to break down everything I know about orchestration into a couple minutes, which is a little difficult, but we'll see if we can do it. So if you're going for today's sound, like a modern orchestra, a modern film score, a modern TV trailer sound, here's what you want to focus on. You want to focus heavily on the strings and the brass, usually the strings. Woodwinds, things like flutes and piccolos, are rarely featured, and they're just there to support and ornament the brass and the strings. And the percussion is either really heavy or really, really light. It's not the same type of orchestration that Mozart used. Melodically, sometimes yes, but not. It's much heavier and kind of rock sounding. So if you think about each section of the orchestra, and by section I mean like the strings are one section, the brass is one section, the woodwinds are one section. If you think of them as being four-part choirs with a soprano, alto, tenor, bass, you'll always have an easier time approaching the orchestration. And when you kind of dedicate them doing specific things, like in a band, if a rock guitar is doing a riff, the bass is doing something different. If the strings are doing a rhythmic line, then maybe the brass are doing a melodic line, and vice versa. If you kind of dedicate them and simplify, your sound will actually sound bigger. So let's get started. Say let's write something rhythmic in the strings. I would bring up a string patch that would cover everything. I'm not going to worry about voicings. I'm just going to play it on the keyboard or on the piano. And then we'll worry about separating the parts later. Okay, very, very simple. Great. So now, what I would do is then play. Later on in the orchestration, I would copy this part to the different sections of the orchestra. So I would copy the see where this says spiccato, cello and bass. I would copy this to here. I would copy to the violin and viola and the violin and viola, and then I would literally separate out the parts. So if you see this here, you see everything that I played, right? Well, each one of these lines is a different part of that four-part voicing in the string section. So here, I'll just show you an example. So let's copy it to the violins and the viola. So let's say that we know that this is the bass part, so we're going to get the bass and the cello. We're going to get rid of that. And this middle line, let's say, is the violas. So we'll get rid of that. Right? And there we have our, first and second violin part. Now, to get the viola part, let's do the same thing. But this time, we'll get rid of the bottom two parts, which are the cello and bass, and we'll leave that middle line, which is now the viola. So if we play back the viola,
now to get the cello and bass. You guessed it. We're going to get rid of all these top lines. And now we've got our cello and bass part. Now what we can do is we can copy these parts to other parts of the orchestra as well. So since it's a four-part, when you're thinking about it as a four-part choir, we can do that. We can take these same parts and copy them. We can double them in the brass actually to thicken it up. I wouldn't double it with the woodwinds because that'll actually make it sound weaker, believe it or not. So we could either copy these parts, double some of these parts over to the brass. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's copy the, let's just copy the viola part to the horn staccato and see what that sounds like. And we'll mute this part because that's what we originally played, and we'll see how this sounds. All right, so that's kind of cool. I actually like that. Let's see, do we have... Let's copy the cello and bass part to the trombones, the staccato trombones, because that's a lower. The trombones are kind of equivalent. They're in the same range as, actually, it would be, you know, bass trombones would be in the same range, doing the same thing. So let's see what that sounds like. So that's doubling the cello and the bass. So now let's see what that all sounds like when we play back. Cool. So now we have, you know, both the brass and the strings doing this staccato part. So next we'd want to write like a melodic line. Well, we can either do, we can focus the melodic line, the legato line in the strings or the brass. Doesn't matter. We can even double them up. So let me just show you. Let's make something up. Strings, legato. Okay. That was stupid, so I'm going to try something different. That's fine for right now. Okay, so let's go in and quantize it. Let's try playing that back. Okay, so let's try copying this to the brass and see if we like that instead. Or maybe even the trumpets. Let's see what it sounds like with the trumpets. Let's mute this. So you can see the brass has a much more majestic sound. If we want that, a huge heroic sound, we can use that and instead, or we can use the more intimate emotional sound of the strings. Or, if we were doing a longer version of this, we could alternate. We could do one legato or one melody line with the strings, one with the brass, and then we could combine them together. And actually, let's see what it sounds like if they're together. Now that you've heard this a million times. Basically, that Hollywood orchestration sound is using octaves. And this simple doubling up the melody and the strings and in the brass, and then also having that staccato against it. It's very simple, but gives you that big, majestic sound. Let's see what else we can add. Okay, great. Still looks like we've got our strings going on, we've got our brass going on. What else could we add in there? Let's see here. We've got trumpets, we've got brass, we've got, let's see here. We could do some percussion. Okay, the Grand Cos is a huge bass drum, so you could think of it as a big kick or a tom or whatnot, but let's add a little percussion. I'm just hitting one note on the keyboard, and we'll see what happens. So really, I'm just kind of playing random rhythmic notes, and let's see what happens. Now what you're hearing is there's a sample delay on these horns and strings, so they're a little bit off. What's actually on is the percussion here. So let's just make sure. Sometimes you have to do a little bit of a delay to get it to line up with the tick. Let's see here. Cool. So now let's make sure. Let's do the same with these guys. Let's do. Usually around here seems to do it. So let's pre-delay these. What I'm doing is there's a delay. The strings are actually not playing in time, so I'm putting a pre-delay on them so they are in time. And that actually happens recording live with the orchestra a lot. I've seen The violins are just the way the instruments are designed. They're not always perfect to the grid, so the music editors have to move it to line up to the grid, which is basically what we're doing here. So this should play back, and actually, let's see if these guys line up better too. If let's line these to -24 also. This should play back pretty nicely. Cool. Let's add a little something. Let's add like, I don't know. No, that was stupid too. Not perfect. I'm trying to move as quickly as possible, but let's see. Let's do 16th notes on these guys. So if we play these back, let's move this. Also, this one is -192. Okay. Got some errors in there, but getting there. Actually, that's awful. Let's keep that out. Let's lay in some low legato brass. Let's see here. And actually, the mistake I'm doing here is when the lower you are in the brass section, you don't want to be using like close clustered chords. That's one tip. With the brass, you kind of want to do fifths and octaves and things like that. So let's try that. Let's bring it up. Let's see here. And there's so much I can keep doing, but yeah, this is just a quick kind of off-the-cuff way that you can use different parts. There's 1,000 things we could do here. We haven't even addressed the woodwinds. Basically, the wood, you notice it's fine without the woodwinds, but if we were to add woodwinds, they would be doing little hits, like on the bar, da da da, blink. That would, you hear those little scales, and maybe we can look at that later on. But hope this was somewhat helpful and gave you some insight on, some basic, simple orchestration techniques. All right, take care and have a good one.